Hello, social workers. I hope you're having a great day, evening, morning, whatever time it is, wherever you're at watching this video right now. We're going to talk about Module 4, analyzing and researching social policies. The key takeaways that we want you to have and come away with are that it helps you become a better advocate for the people that you work with. So basically, by learning this, you become a better social worker. Why? Because you interact directly with the people that are impacted by these programs. You can provide an understanding of their experiences and how policies will impact people. Not a lot of people and professionals can say that you work directly with those that are impacted, especially if there's social justice issues involved. You're working with people that are struggling. You can be a voice to help inform the policy process to make sure that to mitigate and lessen the negative impacts of any policy. And it's a tool for you if you're seeking change in the system. So what is a policy? It's a cause or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government party, business, or individual. So when I say party, I don't mean like a celebration. What we're talking about is political party. So in this country, it's the Democrats, Republicans, and any smaller third party. A business can adopt policies on hiring. They can adopt policies and procedures for any type of business that they're doing. Those aren't in effect of the law, so they just apply to the business and how that particular business or agency conducts its overall affairs. And you can have your own individual policies. So if you don't drink caffeine after 5 p.m. or if you don't eat sweets or desserts after a certain time because it affects your sleep, that's your own personal policy. And not necessarily my policy, but I'm working on it. And so social policies are enacted by governments to address human needs. So three common areas are education, health, and what we're focusing on this class is social welfare. And social welfare policy are the collective responses to social problems uh, for the maintenance of social well-being. So it's definitely thinking about the broader society when we're thinking about social welfare policy. How is policy made? This shows a rational policy-making process. And so for your assignment this week, you're going to be engaging in step number 1, define the problem. So as you wrap around this rational 6-step process, you can see that you identify the decision criteria. So what are the elements and things that you'll consider when you are making a policy decision? Allocate weights to that criteria. So assign a point value or a number value to those decision elements. Develop alternatives. So in policy, they don't just necessarily advocate for one thing. You could advocate for multiple avenues of action, and you can even advocate to not take action as well and maintain the status quo. You evaluate the alternatives, so you're looking at each choice that you have, and then in the end you select the best alternative. Real life example of that could be in the when we're looking at the primary politics that are happening. We just had a debate recently of the Democratic primary candidates. Each of them have a policy platform. Those are the policy approaches that they take to key issues. Each candidate has a unique platform, so not all of them are going to be the same. An example of a social policy around health and access to universal health care. So there's differences, and whoever wins that primary election will become the presidential candidate, and the National Democratic Party will adopt that candidate's platform. And so if that candidate becomes president, then that will be the policy approach to health care in the next 4 years. So the president gets elected, and now the policy is in place, and now laws have to be passed, and that can be a complicated process. So this is Definitely not an easy thing to unpack and consider, but let's just think about um, all the activity that's going on in Washington, D.C. and Capitol Hill. There's special interests, there's lobbyists, there's advocacy organizations that are all making efforts to ensure that their voices are heard when laws are being proposed. Here's a simpler model. Um, and so every law starts with an idea. So this is the policy that we're talking about. We're talking about social welfare policy, and a specific policy area is a big idea. So let's keep talking about healthcare. If the big idea is that all people should have access to healthcare and it should be universal, then that's a big idea that's going to drive the laws that are introduced. And the bill would need to be introduced and passed by both the House and the Senate. But if the opposing party has a majority in either House or Senate, it makes it extremely difficult to get a law passed that completely goes for what your policy idea is. So if your policy idea, again, is universal health care, say the opposing party controls the Senate, well, it's going to be hard to get that universal health care passed. Let's say that it does pass, it goes to the president's desk, he can choose to sign it, it becomes law. There are other avenues that he can take as well. It's vetoed, do nothing, or the pocket veto. So we have some videos that are in the module that you should look at to get a better idea of how a bill becomes a law. And here's a link here. I suggest clicking on this for more information, for more details. So a policy analysis framework is what we want you to use. So when you're doing the social policy analysis, it's a model. So think about conducting an assessment in a direct practice social work setting, either in your internship or your employment. Do you use a model? Do you use a screening tool to make an assessment? And so that's what the framework really does for you. It focuses in on the specific elements that you're looking at. And so, for example, the biopsychosocial model is one way of conducting an assessment, so collecting information in all those areas. So that puts like the parameters, the boundaries of what information that you're going to bring in to your analysis. And so the dynamics around policy in general is that rationalism is the idea that you're taking away all feelings and emotions out of the policy process and you're making an objective, informed decision. Well, we all know that in today's political climate that hardly happens. There's a lot of finger pointing. It seems like there's a lot more name calling and emotion around all the decisions that are being made at the national level. Incrementalism is policies get passed piece by piece. It doesn't all happen at once. There's many steps and progress towards an end policy goal. The window of opportunity is when a policy or set of laws gets passed, because let's give Affordable Care Act or Obamacare as it's often known an example. When the president was a Democrat, the Senate was controlled by the Democrats, and the House is controlled by the Democrats. They knew that it was their one chance to pass health care reform. They did it. A lot of congressional members lost their jobs because of it, but they took that decision, they made it, and now the Affordable Care Act is still the law of the land 10 years later. Magnitude, so basically what that says is the more dramatic an event that occurs, the more significant the policy response. We had an example on the 9/11 attacks back in 2001. The Patriot Act was passed, and that really affected civil liberties. For example, it came to be found out that many people's cell phones and text messages and emails were being monitored by spy agencies. And when this was found out, Congress acted to restrict the government from doing that and invading people's privacy. Implementation of policies. So this is important because this is what you do on the ground. If you're a social worker and you're in child welfare, you are implementing policies of the state child welfare agency, which here in Arizona would be DCS, and they follow any of the requirements that are made by the funding agency, typically out of the Children's Bureau in Washington, D.C. And so you are a street level bureaucrat. You are making decisions on the street, on the fly. You are determining whether someone has access to services and critical analysis, which you'll be doing for your assignment. Here's the 8 steps to critical analysis. And this is on your textbook at page 100. And so the assignment will be focusing on number 1, identifying the problem. Here's a model for critical social policy analysis. So underneath this, we put the 3 different phases. Social and political consensus that the problem needs a policy solution. Phase 2 is political feasibility and will. Timing to adopt the policy. And 3 is funding, implementation, impact, and perception of impact. And so you can see over the course of this 8-step process, the policy gets delivered and impacts the affected populations. Now, did it go as planned? Did it reach its intended impact? And were there some unintended consequences as well? So for your assignment, you're going to be identifying the problem. So when you look at some of the sources of data, you always want to question it. And here's a list of some of those data sources that you can use for your assignment. We'll talk a little bit more about these on another video, but you can find these on page 109 through 113. So what's the point? Policies are formalized responses to social problems. Policies reach clients through programs and services, and policy practitioners identify problems and craft political responses by using a policy analysis framework. So in reality, policies are usually incremental. They don't happen at once. There are multiple ways to make a law in addition to the formal bill-making process. There's executive order that are discussed in the book. There are multiple levels of government, so not just the federal government. We have state governments, and even cities and municipalities can pass ordinances. Once it's adopted, it can be changed, not implemented, or repealed. So it doesn't end there. There are many factors that are involved with seeing a policy go through. So just a brief slide on the assignment. Like I said, I'm going to put together another video that goes more in depth into the assignment. So the part 1 of the assignment, statement of the problem, that's what you're going to be doing this week. The other 2 parts are in the last week of class. Okay, so not this week, the last week, and we'll complete those steps then. So for now, do part 1. That's what you're doing. That's my check mark there. Don't do these. Do part 1. Focus on one aspect of the problem. The problem must have a policy solution. The assignment's due on Sunday, the 22nd at 11:59. And I hope you have a great day. Please watch the video on the assignment. And take care wherever you're at. And best of luck. Take care. Bye.